After all those drama and trauma in Japan, Rugby World Cup 2019, just 3 months ago, we are back in the international rugby calendar as the Six Nations begins this weekend as 3 teams or 6 teams line up. And talk about that, we have a special guest, of course, Premiership Rugby's highest try scorer and former England representative, so as Leicester Tigers and Wasps, Tom Varndell. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
After the disappointing loss against obviously South Africa in that World Cup final, if you can just reflect on that, especially in this England versus France, what sort of mental attitude they bring to this game?
It's an interesting one because obviously the season in the Premiership's been a bit up and down, especially for the Saracens players. The disappointment, I suppose, of losing the final against South Africa. So there'll be a lot of mixed emotions. They'll be wanting to go out and prove a point, get back on the horse. And we'll see. You know, it's going to be the England squad's a fantastic squad. Young talent coming through. Eddie Jones has created a team which is, you know, full of youth and experience. Very talented players, but it's whether they can come together, pick themselves up after that World Cup final, and move on. And then you add into the mix the Saracens fiasco. There's a lot of Saracens boys in the England squad, so you know we shall see.
What sort of mental attitude those Saracens team, especially in the Portugal, you know that. But although the media speaks about that, do you think the team is reacted to that and they're forgotten everything what happened?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they've been obviously been over in Browns in Portugal doing their pre-tournament training. The Saracens boys, obviously, they're a very focused bunch. They have definitely closed ranks. There hasn't been too much press sort of in the build-up around the England squad about the Saracens fiasco. So I think they've got a job to do. They're professional players. They're very professional, especially the likes of Farrell, Itoje. And they'll be focused 100% now on England and going to that France game and getting that win.
England-France, the first game for them on Sunday, as you can see on the screens. But talking about this England team, we saw that gigantic performance, especially against All Blacks. The very first 2 minutes, they scored that brilliant try going wide to wide. And do you think that French coach Fabien Galthié will have a plan to stop this England attacking line?
England, they've got, Eddie Jones always talks about having different ways of playing, and they've got that wide to wide game. They've got pace to burn, you know, in the likes of Johnny May, Elliot Daly, but then they've got the big physical game as well, you know, with Itoje in the pack leading from the front. So I think England's game now is very all round. They can play any style of play, and it's how France can react to that. France again, you don't know what French team you're going to get. They could be unbelievable or they can be pretty poor, and you've got that in the World Cup. You know, you had really good aspects of France, then you had some poor games as well. England tend to be quite consistent with their performance now.
Absolutely. And talking about England backs, Johnny May would be perhaps the first choice in that left wing position, but Elliot Daly sometimes he's so handy in that fullback, but all the time people are talking about his high ball ability. But in terms of attacking, yes, he's perhaps the first choice along with Anthony Watson. You played with Daly quite a lot in the Wasps, where he played as a 12 or 13 sometimes, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, Daly can play all over the back line. Obviously he's been preferred on the wing or at fullback. He will be, I reckon he'll be probably coming in at fullback this week. His high ball skills are fantastic. His kicking game is brilliant. His kicking at goal is phenomenal in terms of the distance he can generate. And then you've got Johnny May, who's pace to burn. And even a Leicester side that's been sort of up and down this season, he's been pretty consistent scoring tries. And then Anthony Watson's obviously had a horrendous Achilles injury but made the World Cup and was probably one of the stand-up players for England in the World Cup. Their back three is brilliant, and they're going to be tough to, you know, keep under control for France, and we'll see how they go. But like you say, Daly, I played with him from when he was 18 years old at Wasps, and the way he's progressed and developed, and his all-round game is just fantastic now.
Absolutely, indeed. And let's talk about the talking point of the two Harlequins duo, Smith and Domband. Are you surprised the omission of especially Domband with his recent performance for Quins?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, both of them guys, they've been pretty good for Quins. You know, last week when they played against Saracens, they were unbelievable. I think Smith for an outrageous dummy and set up a couple of tries, and they're both of them. I think Eddie Jones has left them out for a reason. Probably they need another maybe year of development. Smith especially is still very young. He only played in the England 20s, I think, 2 seasons ago. So it's just a very competitive team at the moment. Everyone's playing very, very well. And I think Eddie Jones has stuck to what he knows a little bit on the back of that World Cup. But hopefully, you know, it's not going to be too long before they're both going to be, you know, regular members of that England team.
Nephew of the All Black great Tana Umaga, the Wasp player Jacob Umaga. For him, it's a surprise. We saw that on Wasp media as well. Surprise inclusion. Is he going as an apprentice, or do you think he will get a chance ahead of Ford maybe?
he might take a bit more like a Smith role last year in terms of like just an introduction, be around the squad. He might even get a run out in the Italy game, hopefully. You know, that'd be great to see him out there, especially the way he's played for Wasps. Again, Wasps have been a bit stuttering this year, but he's been one of the the stand-up performers. He's keeping some big names out of the Wasps team, and he's deserved the opportunity. Like comes from a fantastic pedigree in his family, and he's definitely sticking his hand up, and hopefully he will get the opportunity. But what a season he's had. I think he only signed his first professional contract 2 seasons ago, and the journey he's had so far has been pretty incredible.
Absolutely, indeed. Let's have a look at some analysis or the results, how the England team played in this World Cup. They had pretty much the easiest start along with Tonga, but it was not that difficult coming into that, Tom. But the France game, unfortunately, it was cancelled due to that hurricanes. What do you think about the impact they especially played against New Zealand and played against South Africa? And have they still keeping those inside their minds, or have they just forgotten that performance? It's 3 months long.
Yeah, I mean, it is 3 months, but it's still very short in terms of the grand scheme of things. And I think the performance against New Zealand, they'll take a huge amount of confidence from that, because I think that shocked everyone around the world how well they played and how easy they made it look. If they can play anywhere near that at the weekend, I think they'll win the game quite comfortably. But then you look at the South Africa game where they were completely outplayed, physically, in the set piece, in the backs, and France will look at that game and see where South Africa won. And we just don't know. It's after every World Cup, historically, there's always a Grand Slam winner. Yep. So this is a massive game for both teams, and we shall see. Hopefully, we get the New Zealand England that we saw, because I think if England turn up like they played against South Africa, it could be a tough day for them.
It could be a tough game indeed. And let's have a look at how France played their World Cup campaign in Japan. 2 narrow win against Argentina as well as Tonga. They were leading 23-6 in the first half, but Tonga came back strong. I had a chat actually with David Halifono, former Tongan player as well. But sometimes they are unpredictable, and could they be the dark horses this time?
I don't know. With France, again, we looked at the team sheet before we started today, and it's quite a new squad. There's a lot of inexperience there. New coach. Sean Edwards has come in as defence coach. I think will be massive. I worked with Sean at Wasps, and he is a brilliant defence coach. A little bit off the wall, a little bit crazy, and maybe that will help with the French sort of mentality. But it's a tough one to call, because France, like you said, they're hot or cold, and in the World Cup it proved that. They were great against USA. But then Tonga and Argentina, they did stutter a little bit, and then they got the bye against England. So we just don't know. It is a very inexperienced team, but we shall see. We shall see. Stade de France is the winner. It's going to be a packed house with the Marseille, the national anthem of France as well. Finally, before we go for a break, what's your score prediction? I think England will win 28-10.
28-10. Okay, suggest your scores. Just comment your scores below. We'll see. That's a huge win. We'll see. We'll wait and see. We'll go for a quick break and we'll be back. Well, the other big game, Ireland versus Scotland in Aviva Stadium, Dublin, Tom. That's going to be another cracker. New captain Stuart Hogg, along with Gregor Townsend, they didn't have their, they didn't have their moment of glory in the Rugby World Cup, especially both the teams going down to Japan. And what sort of mental attitude they have in place?
Scotland are always a difficult one, because they have got some great talent, but they never seem to click at any of the tournaments. They're never very consistent. They had some great wins over the years, but they never ever really hit the heights that you probably expect them to, especially when you've got the likes of players like Finn Russell, who obviously is being well talked about in the press that he's not going to be playing in the tournament. So I just don't know. I think Ireland will win this game. I think they'll win it quite easily. Farrell's come out and he said that he's picked his strongest Ireland team in years, and Ireland are normally there or thereabouts the best team in the championship, next to England. So it's going to be a tough game for Scotland. Obviously away as well in Ireland. Ireland are going to have a point to prove, especially on the back of that World Cup. So we shall see.
Don't you think it's quite interesting that, of course, Andy Farrell is the coach and Johnny Sexton new captain, and Owen Farrell is his son captaining England. So, is there going to be a serious competition, or is there going to be lots of emotions going out when they come into play?
Oh, I think both the Farrells are very competitive. I've worked with Farrell at England Saxons level when he was coach there, and you know, he's fiercely competitive, and we obviously just have to look at his rugby league career to see what he achieved, and he'll be very focused, and they'll obviously already be targeting the England game. But you know, the old cliche is it's one game at a time. They'll be focused on this big game against Scotland, getting off to a good win, and obviously I suppose making amends a little bit from the World Cup, because they will be disappointed from the World Cup. They would have expected to do a lot better, especially when the build up to that. They were probably the #1 team in the UK. And yeah, they'll be looking to push on.
Yeah, there's lots of Leinster players joining this squad. This is how Ireland played in their World Cup campaign. 2 wins, actually 3 wins and a loss, especially against the host nation, Japan. And reflecting on this, your thoughts, Tom?
Yes, obviously they had a big win against Scotland, which will obviously be in the front of their mind going into this game. The disappointment against Japan, but Japan were, for me, the favourites, you know, the best team in the World Cup. The way they come from and where they are was brilliant. That was a great game. And then Samoa were poor in the World Cup, and Russia were poor in the World Cup. So you can't really take much from that pool, pool fixtures, because 3 of the teams were pretty poor. And Ireland should have beaten them hands down. Really, Ireland on paper should have won the group. But yeah, overall, I think they had a disappointing World Cup, and they'll be looking to push on and you know, right the wrongs that they had there. And Farrell will be working them very hard over the line, or would have worked them very hard in the build up to this tournament. You know, to come out and say that he reckons it's the strongest Ireland team they've had in years, you know, that's a big statement. So they're going to need to prove that.
Let's have a look at the Scotland, how they performed in their World Cup. Again, Samoa and Russia, 2 big wins, but going down to Japan. But talking about that Ireland game, and what sort of game plans? Will they change their attacking platform, especially with their backs? And also Gray brothers, one of the Grays is not in the squad, especially Finn Russell, the playmaker. Yeah,
I mean, losing Finn Russell was the big one, because he is, you know, he's been brilliant for Racing, his club over in France, for a good couple of years, and he's always the standout player in the Scottish teams. To lose him is massive. They're going to have to rely heavily on Hastings now to step up. He's very young. Again, he was only playing in the 20 squad, you know, maybe a season ago, maybe 2 seasons ago. So there's a lot of pressure on him to direct this team, move around the pitch. Ireland, like England, have got a game that they can adapt to any conditions. They've got great forwards, they've got great backs, and Scotland have got to find the answer to that. Scotland, sometimes they could play quite slow ball, and they don't tend to build too many phases. And Ireland are very good at, especially over the breakdown. Their backs are probably one of the best in the world at getting over the breakdown, slowing down that ball. And if Scotland can't get that quick ball, then I think the Irish defence will just destroy them. You know, Farrell is massive on defence, building pressure, using defence as a form of attack, and Scotland they could have a tough day at the office.
Defence as a form of attack. We have seen that Ireland, especially countering or attacking, especially inside the 22, just like the All Blacks do quite often. But talking about missing Finn Russell and Gary Ringrose, he was outstanding against Northampton Saints in that Championship Cup, European Championship rather. So he in fact scored a hat-trick. He took like 40 minutes to score, not like you who took 13 minutes to score your first hat-trick when you were playing for Leicester Tigers. And Russell was outstanding form, but do you think we will attack in the territorial way, or they just play wherever attack?
I think Scotland were going to have to do a lot of kicking to relieve the pressure. Ireland, on the other hand, they're playmakers. They'll be able to play the ball. Sexton's brilliant at his tactical kicking as well, but he's good in ball in hand and throwing that ball wide. So Scotland are going to be under pressure a lot. They're going to be getting attacked from all directions, and Ireland, like I said before, are going to want to get off the mark very quickly, really build that pressure and get a good win in the first fixture, especially being at home as well.
Talking about Ireland's forwards, their scrum has been developed in the recent years, but despite the World Cup performance, Healy, again Jack McGrath, also Furlong coming into the squad, but there's a huge competition for them to also get that starting lineup. Talking about them.
Yeah. I mean, Cian Healy's been around for a long time, and he is basically they build their scrum around him. When he's fit, his around the park play as well is fantastic. His handling, he's a bit like Sinclair actually in terms of he can add as a bit of a link man as well as a carrier and a scrummager. So when you look at Ireland's team on paper, you've got to put them up there as probably one of the favourites, joint favourites to England to actually win this competition and get the Grand Slam, because they've got stars all over the team, and they've also got an experienced team now. They've been together a long time. Unlike the Scotland team, who've had a lot of injuries and obviously missing key players for whatever reason. It's going to be an interesting battle, but I can't see Scotland give them too much trouble.
Where do you see the leadership, Stuart Hogg and Johnny Sexton, how they're going to reflect in this big stage, especially taking the captain's reign as the first time?
Yeah, I mean, Sexton, he's been around for a long time. Obviously, he's captain Leinster. He has captained Ireland a few times as well. And he is pivotal in terms of Ireland's success, the way he controls the game, calls the plays. He's pretty much their linchpin. In terms of Scotland, obviously Hogg at the back, controlling things. Again, he's very experienced. He's probably outside Finn Russell, their best player, in terms of also his kicking game as well. But I think in terms of the squads on paper, I think Ireland have a lot more leaders within their group, both in the forwards, in the backs, out wide, whereas Scotland don't have too many people to turn to when the pressure comes on.
We talked about Ireland domestic as well, talking about Leinster. They're leading in the European Championship. How much Stuart Lancaster adding value to Leinster?
It's huge. I mean, obviously, Stuart's been in the game coaching for a long time. He started his coaching journey up at Leeds, where he managed to get them into the Premiership, and obviously then he was part of the England setup. There was a lot of ups and downs in the England setup, but the experience that he gained from that, he's now gone on to Leinster. And when Leinster started to sort of fall apart a little bit, when they lost to people like O'Driscoll, he's obviously brought them back together, and working with Leo Cullen, he's created something very special down there. So, and Sexton, that will rub off on Sexton. That will only help with his leadership and his game and going forward now with Ireland. You
said that Ireland going to win big. Let's have your score prediction.
I think it could be in the 40s. I think we're looking at 42 points to 12, I reckon.
42 points to 12, Ireland win. We'll wait and see. Saturday, the game is at Aviva Stadium in Dublin. That's the second game on Saturday. We'll talk about Wales versus Italy after this break. Welcome back once again. So the first game of Guinness Six Nations 2020, Wales versus Italy at Principality Stadium, and two new coaches, Tom, talking about Wayne Pivac and also the Smith interim coach. You have had some experience in the Scarlets team along with Wayne.
Yeah, I had about 3 months with Wayne down at Scarlets, I think about 2 seasons ago. Fantastic coach, obviously great pedigree, comes from New Zealand. He's a great manager of players. He does care about obviously the whole morale and everything around the squad, and obviously you got Stephen Jones as well, who's very experienced. He was my coach at Wasps. Great rugby knowledge, understands the game. It was a quality fly half himself for Wales. I think it's a great appointment for the coach to have him as the coach, and he will really bring that squad together, and hopefully they'll have a good Six Nations.
Talking about the Italian interim coach and Conor O'Shea, we know that O'Shea led the Harlequins team in 2011 for Premiership glory, but he went back to Italy looking at their World Cup performance. We'll come back to that, but talking about new coaching job, what sort of mentality he will have? I
mean, with Conor, he was brilliant for Harlequins. Obviously, they won the Premiership under him. He got them to come through the leagues again and back into the Premiership and create a great squad. And again, he very much like Pivac. He does care about the players, and he cares about the whole emotion around the squad. And he doesn't put too much pressure on any players. And everyone that I spoke to has always enjoyed working with him. It's a shame that it didn't work out for him in Italy. And again, I think that's a case of different cultures and different personalities, and maybe it doesn't really fit into his way of thinking, maybe. And I can only speak from experience when I was over in France, and I moved from being in the Premiership all my career to going to France and trying that, sign a 3-year deal, and only lasted 6 months. It just didn't suit the culture. Just didn't, it was too different to what I was used to.
Yeah, that's right. Too different what he's used to. But talking about the Welsh performance in that Rugby World Cup in Tokyo and in Japan, won all the group games, and they beat France convincingly in the quarterfinals. Coming into that South African game, and also the bronze medal competition. Probably they could have done better to get some momentum.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like when you look at it like that and you see their performances, they were pretty good. You know, they got all the way to the semi-final and then obviously eventually lost to the winners, South Africa, who were head and shoulders above everybody else in the competition. The bronze medal game is always a tough one. When you take a bit of a battering in the semi-final, you have the disappointment not making a World Cup final. It is a tough one to pick yourself up for. And New Zealand had a lot more to prove in that game than I think Wales did, obviously because England completely tore them apart. So I think Wales will be very proud of their performance in the World Cup because they did do very well, and only England and the home nations bettered them. So I think they'll be going into the Six Nations full of confidence. They've got quite a good settled squad, a lot of senior players, and they've also brought in a couple of youngsters as well, exciting youngsters. Obviously, Reece Ammett, who's been doing well for Gloucester. Jonah Holmes again, who's been doing fantastically well for the last 2 seasons over at Leicester. So I think Wales are going to be a bit of a dark horse. Everyone's talking about England and Ireland, but I think Wales, obviously they won it last year.
Yep.
They'll be looking to really kick on, and I think can't ask for a better fixture than Italy at home.
Yeah, that's how Wales finished that defending champions, of course, 2019 Six Nation title. And let's have a look at how Italy played in their World Cup campaign. You can see 2 wins, of course, with Namibia and Canada, but going 14-93 against South Africa, and the New Zealand match, of course, it was no result.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, they had a pretty tough group, and they put in some good performances against Namibia and Canada. Canada, they were actually brilliant. I remember watching that and thinking, you know, they could top the group here, because at one point they were topping the group, weren't they? And they really dug in and got some good performances. Obviously, South Africa. We've already spoke about South Africa. They were class, and they didn't get the chance to have a go against New Zealand. But Italy are always very hard ones to call because they can play some great rugby. Their set piece is always very consistent. They don't generate too much quick ball, which makes it very easy for defences to close them down, I suppose. But they have the ability to suddenly score tries from anywhere. They do have some great talent in their squad. And for me, I think if Italy are still in the game at 60 minutes, Wales will start getting a little bit twitchy because it can come down just that, you know, a couple of mistakes and Italy are back in that game.
Absolutely, Neil. Let's talk about some players in this squad. We have Ken Owens in the front row, Alan Wynne-Jones, the legend in the lock combination, and Josh Navidi in the loose forward. They have been done in the recent past quite well in the club competition.
Yeah, I mean, all these players, they're now seasoned professionals, they're seasoned internationals, they've been around, they know how to win big games. Navidi, I think, is one of the standout back rowers in world rugby at the moment. His turnovers, his link play now is brilliant. Mobility around the park is brilliant. And he's very consistent. Alan Wynne-Jones, he is a legend in the game, British Lion captain. He knows he's played this game for so long now.
Do you still think he can go for the next Lions too?
I think so, yeah. I think so. I don't see why not. I mean, if he's enjoying it and he's playing like he is playing, then why not? He's one of the biggest, you know, leaders in the UK, and I think you need him in your squad, and I think you need him in the Lions squad. So yeah, and then you obviously got Dan Biggar in the backs, who's a bit like Sexton, who's kicking the corners. His territorial game is fantastic in terms of his kicking, his link play, his ability to get his back line moving. Yeah, I think Wales are definitely a team to watch in this tournament, and they'll be pushing. And like I said, it's a great fixture to start off with, you know, at home against Italy.
You mentioned about Dan Biggar. Of course, he's the pivotal decision maker in that Welsh line. He went on to so many critics just before his selection to the Rugby World Cup, but he proved that all the critics were wrong.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Wales rugby public they are tough ones to please, and I think that it takes a lot to get back on their good side. And I think Dan Biggar has been very consistent. I thought he had a great World Cup. He's been brilliant for Northampton in the Premiership. Obviously, they're sitting near the top of the table. So yeah, I don't think he does much wrong. And if he's on form, then Wales normally are on form as well.
Halfpenny and George North, two experience. Again, they have some pressure because the youngsters are coming into the squad.
Yeah.
How will they react?
I think the pressure's good for them. George has definitely found form over the last couple of seasons since leaving Northampton. Halfpenny is always consistently very, very good, obviously, with his kicking game as well. Obviously, it's a shame they're missing Williams from Saracens, obviously due to injury, but they've just got experience. I mean, you just listen off a couple of players then, it's just so much experience. They've all played for the British Lions, they've all done World Cups, they've been in the Wales squad for almost a decade now, I suppose, when you look at it. and they've got some big game players.
Castro Giovanni, Andrea Masi are some big names in the Italian setup. Talking about this young team, we know that Wasp fullback also in this Italian squad. Will they have the power in the forwards play, or will they have the power in the strength with their backs?
I think forwards. I think Italy have, historically have been more forward orientated, and I think it does break down sometimes when they're trying to generate that quick ball for their backs to play. But they have got some good backs as well, and like I said before, they can score from anywhere. It takes a couple of errors, and they will jump on that loose ball. I mean, this is international rugby, and they're there because they're great players, and they will test some teams. But it's about generating that consistency now in their performance. Obviously, you had Parise, who's been a legend of the game for such a long time. It'd be great for him to go out on a high. I believe this is going to be his last Six Nations. So I think it's important for him as their captain, as their icon in Italian rugby, that he can basically finish on a high. And I think they have the ability to do that. Unfortunately, it is a tough start. Wales in Cardiff at the Principality Stadium is a tough fixture for anybody. So if they're in the game at 60 minutes, I think they'll get their tails up, and they have the ability, like I say, to score from anywhere, and a breakaway try could cause an upset.
Well, Sergio Parise might have his farewell game when Italy hosts one of the games in Rome. So he's omitted from this squad. But as you said, finally, to wrap up, what's your final score prediction?
I think it'll be a bit closer than what people think. I think we're probably looking at about a 24-9. I don't think Italy will score, but I think they'll push them, and it'll be a tough fight for Wales.
Well, we'll find that results probably within the next 48 hours. We'll wait and see. Do comment your score prediction on this video as well. Thank you very much, Tom. We'll see you next week with more analysis, and log on to this page and subscribe this channel.